What if everything you've been told about success, happiness, and the meaning of life is just a story someone else wrote for you to follow, not because it's true, but because it keeps you quiet, predictable, and easy to manage? Look around. Most people move through life like actors in a play they never auditioned for. They wake up, chase promotions, scroll for validation, chase more, sleep, repeat. They're not unhappy, just numb. Comfortably asleep inside a dream they mistake for reality, and that's the danger, not seeing the dream for what it is. But what if you start to see through it? What if you notice the script doesn't fit your soul? That's when everything shifts, and that's when it gets dangerous, because seeing what others don't isn't a superpower. It's a burden. At first, it feels like clarity, like finally waking up after years of sleepwalking. But soon, you realize no one else is awake. Your friends laugh at your questions, your family calls you too deep, your coworkers roll their eyes when you wonder aloud, is this really all there is? You begin to feel like a ghost in a world of mannequins, surrounded yet utterly alone. And that loneliness, it cuts deeper than failure ever could. But here's the truth they won't tell you. That ache in your chest isn't a flaw. It's a signal, a quiet alarm ringing from the core of your being saying, this isn't real, this isn't you. Most people silence that alarm with distractions, more work, more noise, more stuff, but you can't, because once you've glimpsed the truth behind the curtain, you can't unsee it, and that's where the real journey begins. The world doesn't reward those who see clearly. It resists them. It labels them difficult, unrealistic, or lost. Why? Because truth disrupts the system. It threatens the illusion that keeps millions marching in lockstep toward a finish line that doesn't even exist. To see what others don't is to stand outside the herd, and the herd doesn't like outliers. It fears them, so it tries to pull you back in, with guilt, with mockery, with silence. But don't mistake their fear for your failure. This discomfort you feel, the restlessness, the questions, the sense that something vital is missing, isn't a sign you're broken. It's proof you're alive, truly alive. While others trade their days for security and applause, you're being called to something deeper, authenticity. Not the kind you post online, but the raw, unfiltered kind that lives in your choices, your silence, your refusal to pretend. And yes, it's dangerous. Dangerous to your comfort. Dangerous to your reputation. Dangerous to the life you've carefully built on borrowed beliefs. But here's the reward waiting for you on the other side of that danger. Freedom. Not the loud, flashy kind, but the quiet, unshakable kind. The kind that comes when you stop living for others' approval and start living from your own truth. That's why you're here, not by accident, not for entertainment. You're here because something inside you refuses to settle. Because you've tasted the bitterness of a life lived on autopilot, and you're ready to wake up fully. And if you stay with this truth, if you dare to trust what you see even when no one else does, you won't just change your life. You'll become a light for others still trapped in the dream. So don't look away. Don't shrink back to fit in. The world needs people who see clearly, not to fix everything, but to remind the rest of us that there's more to life than the script we've been handed. Your vision isn't a curse, it's a calling, and the danger isn't in seeing what others don't, it's in ignoring it. You've felt it. The weight of speaking a truth no one wants to hear. You've watched eyes glaze over when you question the grind, when you wonder why we trade our days for dollars that never fill the hollow places. And in that moment, you didn't just feel misunderstood, you felt exiled. Because the moment you name the illusion, you step outside the circle, and the circle doesn't just ignore you, it tightens against you. This isn't coincidence, it's human nature. Your brain is wired for safety, not truth. For thousands of years, survival depended on belonging. Being cast out meant death. So your nervous system still treats disagreement like danger. When you challenge the group's story, about success, about love, about what matters, you trigger an ancient alarm. This person threatens the tribe. And so, without even realizing it, people push back, not because you're wrong, but because your clarity threatens their comfort. That's why truth tellers have always been called fools, radicals, or worse. Not because they're dangerous to society, but because they're dangerous to the sleepwalking. The system doesn't fear rebellion. With fists it fears rebellion with eyes wide open. A person who sees through the game doesn't need to shout. Their very presence is a mirror, and most people would rather smash the mirror than face what it shows. But here's what they won't tell you: that rejection you feel, it's not a sign to retreat, it's confirmation you're on the right path. Every time someone dismisses your insight, every time you're labeled too intense or overthinking, you're being tested, not by them, but by life itself. Will you trade your vision for acceptance, or will you stand in your truth, even when it costs you? Psychology proves it. The more you suppress your authentic perspective to fit in, the more your soul withers. You start doubting your intuition. You numb the questions with busyness or distraction. You begin to believe the lie that maybe you are the problem. But you're not broken. You're awake, and awakening always feels like loss at first. Loss of the old identity, loss of false belonging, loss of the illusion that you were ever truly safe inside the dream. Yet, within that loss lies liberation, because once you stop seeking permission to see clearly, something powerful happens. You stop needing the crowd's approval to trust yourself. You realize their comfort isn't your compass. Their fear isn't your forecast, and their silence isn't your sentence. This is where courage is born, not in grand declarations, but in the quiet decision to honor what you know, even when no one else does. You don't have to convince them, you don't have to save them, you only have to refuse to betray yourself, and that refusal, it becomes your anchor. When the world spins in circles chasing ghosts, more money, more likes, more proof they're enough, you stand still. Not out of arrogance, but out of alignment. You've seen the strings behind the puppet show, and you choose to move with your own hands now. So let them call you strange, let them whisper that you've changed. You have, and that's the point. The price of clarity is loneliness, but the reward is integrity, and integrity is the only ground strong enough to build a real life on. Not a life that looks good on the outside, but one that feels true on the inside. Don't fear the distance between you and the crowd. That space isn't emptiness. It's where your voice finally finds its echo, and one day someone lost in the same fog will hear it, not because you shouted, but because you stayed honest. Because you dared to see what others refused to, and refused to look away. That's how the world changes, not with armies, but with individuals who choose truth over comfort again and again, even when it hurts. Especially when it hurts, because the danger was never in seeing what others don't. It was in letting that vision die inside you to keep the peace. And you were never meant to keep the peace. You were meant to break the illusion, and finally live. You felt the cost of seeing clearly, the isolation, the doubt, the quiet ache of knowing something vital that no one around you seems ready to face. But what if that vision you carry, the one that sets you apart, isn't just a burden? What if it's a compass, a signal not just that the world is asleep, but that you were born to wake up, and to help others remember they can too? There was a voice, decades ago, who saw the same trap you see now. He watched people chase futures that never arrive, cling to identities that aren't theirs, and mistake the map for the territory. He pointed out the absurdity of living for tomorrow while dying inside today. He didn't preach revolution with banners. He whispered rebellion through presence. He said we're not human beings having spiritual experiences. We're spiritual beings having human experiences. And in that simple reversal, everything cracks open. Because the real deception isn't out there, it's in here. In the belief that you must earn your worth through performance, through accumulation, through becoming someone acceptable. But life isn't a test to pass. It's a dance to join, and the music has been playing all along. You just forgot how to listen. That's what happens when you live inside the system too long. You start thinking the menu is the meal. You confuse the symbol for the substance. You chase promotions, relationships, milestones, believing they'll finally make you feel whole, only to arrive breathless and empty, wondering why fulfillment keeps slipping through your fingers like smoke. But you've seen it now, the gap between the promise and the reality, the hollowness behind the highlight reel, and that awareness it's not a curse. It's the first true breath you've taken in years. Most people never get this far. They stay loyal to the dream even as it drains them, because waking up feels too risky. But you've already crossed the threshold. You can't unsee the machinery behind the curtain. And now, the question isn't whether you'll go back. It's how deeply you'll lean into what you know. This is where transformation begins, not in grand gestures, but in the daily choice to honor your inner truth over outer approval, to sit with discomfort instead of numbing it, to ask, "Is this mine?" before accepting another's definition of success, to stop building your life on sand, on opinions, trends, expectations, and start rooting it in something real, your own presence, your own peace, your own pulse in this very moment. Because here's the secret the world hides. Everything you've been chasing is already here, not in the future, not in someone else's validation, not in the next achievement, but now, in the quiet space between your thoughts, in the breath you're holding right this second, in the raw, unfiltered experience of being alive, messy, uncertain, and gloriously real. That's what the seers have always pointed to, not a better illusion, but the end of illusion itself. Not a new destination, but the courage to stop running and finally arrive. So don't mistake your clarity for confusion. Don't confuse your depth for dysfunction. The world needs people who remember that life isn't a problem to solve, it's a mystery to live. And you're not lost. You're remembering. Stay with that remembering, even when it's hard, even when no one understands, because the moment you stop chasing the dream and start living the truth, you become more than awake. You become a doorway. And someone, somewhere, is already walking toward the light you're learning to hold. You've tasted the truth, and it's left you standing alone in a crowd that's still dancing to a song you can no longer hear. That silence between you and the world isn't emptiness, it's sacred ground, because loneliness isn't the enemy of the awakened. It's the birthplace of their strength. Every soul who ever changed the course of history first sat in that quiet ache, wondering if they were the only one who saw the cracks in the foundation. And in that stillness, they didn't find despair. They found resolve. This is where most turn back. When the weight of being misunderstood presses down, when your questions are met with shrugs or smirks, when even your closest friends say, "Why can't you just relax and enjoy life?" that's the moment your courage is forged. Not in the spotlight, but in the shadows of doubt. Not with applause, but with the quiet decision to trust yourself anyway. Psychology calls it cognitive dissonance, the tension between what you know and what the world insists is true. And your mind will beg you to resolve it by conforming, to shrink your vision, soften your edges, laugh along with the joke you no longer find funny. But every time you do, a part of your spirit dims, because authenticity isn't optional for the awakened. It's oxygen. Without it, you survive, but you don't live. Yet here's the paradox. The very thing that isolates you is also your greatest power. Your clarity, your refusal to pretend, your willingness to sit with the uncomfortable truth. That's not a flaw. It's a frequency. And though few may tune in now, your signal is reaching those who are ready. People who feel the same unease but haven't found the words. People who are one honest conversation away from waking up themselves. You don't need to convert the world. You don't need to be heard by everyone. You only need to stay true enough that your life becomes a living question. What if there's another way? That's how change spreads, not through force, but through resonance, not by shouting, but by being so deeply aligned with your truth that others feel it in their bones. Like a single candle in a dark room, you don't fight the darkness. You simply refuse to go out, and in that refusal, you give others permission to stop pretending too. So stop apologizing for your depth. Stop dimming your insight to make others comfortable. The world doesn't need more people who fit in. It needs more people who remember what it means to be fully human, messy, questioning, present and real. This path won't earn you popularity, but it will earn you something far rarer, peace, the kind that comes not from being right, but from being whole, from knowing that even when you stand alone, you're not lost. You're anchored in something deeper than opinion, trend, or fear. And that anchor holds you steady when the storms of doubt roll in. When you wonder, am I crazy for seeing this? Remember, the sane ones are always called crazy by the sleepwalkers. The healers are labeled disruptors. The truth tellers are exiled, until the world catches up. But you're not waiting for the world to catch up. You're walking ahead not to escape, but to lead by example, not with a banner, but with your breath. Your choices, your refusal to trade your soul for a seat at a table that serves empty plates. So let the loneliness come, sit with it, let it strip away everything that isn't real. Because on the other side of that solitude is a kind of freedom most will never know. The freedom of living from the inside out, not the outside in. You were never meant to blend in. You were meant to break the spell. And every time you choose truth over comfort, you don't just save yourself. You send a ripple through the dream, waking others one quiet heartbeat at a time. You've carried the weight of your vision long enough to know this. The real danger isn't in seeing what others don't, it's in silencing it. Every time you bite your tongue to keep the peace, every time you laugh along with a lie to avoid conflict, every time you bury your insight beneath layers of fine, and whatever, you don't just betray your truth. You betray your future self, because truth isn't just something you speak. It's something you live, and when you stop living it, even in small ways, you create a fracture inside yourself, a slow erosion of self-trust. Psychology calls it self-alienation, the quiet divorce between who you are and who you pretend to be, and it doesn't announce itself with drama. It creeps in as exhaustion, as numbness, as that hollow feeling when you look in the mirror and wonder, who even am I anymore? But here's what they never tell you. Speaking your truth doesn't require an audience. It doesn't demand a stage. Sometimes the most powerful act of courage is whispering it to yourself in the dark. This isn't right. This isn't me, and then honoring that whisper with a single choice, one boundary, one no, one moment where you choose alignment over approval. That's where your power lives, not in grand declarations, but in the daily refusal to abandon yourself. Because every time you honor your inner knowing, you rebuild trust with your soul, and that trust becomes your compass in a world full of noise. The world will tell you to wait, to be polite, to be patient, to pick your battles. But your soul knows better. It knows that silence isn't peace, it's surrender, and every unspoken truth becomes a brick in the wall between you and your aliveness. You weren't given this clarity to hide it. You were given it to embody it. Not to convince, but to radiate. Not to fix everyone, but to stand so firmly in your own center that others feel safe enough to question their own illusions. And yes, it's risky. Speaking your truth might cost you relationships. It might disrupt your comfort. It might make you the odd one out. But ask yourself, what's the cost of staying silent? The cost of living a life that looks right on paper, but feels dead in your bones? The cost of watching years slip by while you wait for permission to be real? That's the real tragedy, not being misunderstood, but never being known at all. So stop waiting for the perfect moment. Stop waiting for everyone to agree. The truth doesn't need consensus to be true. It only needs you to stop denying it. Start small. Say what you mean. Walk away from what drains you. Choose presence over performance. Let your life become a quiet rebellion against the lie that you must shrink to belong. Because belonging that requires you to disappear isn't belonging. It's captivity. And you were born for freedom, not fitting in. Every great shift in human history began with one person refusing to stay silent. Not because they were fearless, but because the pain of pretending became greater than the fear of speaking up. You're at that threshold now, not because you're special, but because you've seen too much to go back. And the world needs your voice, not polished or perfect, but raw and real. So speak, not to be heard by all, but to be true to yourself. And in that truth you'll find something no applause can give you, the unshakable peace of living without apology. Because the danger was never in your vision. The danger was in letting it go quiet. You've spoken your truth, or tried to, and maybe it didn't land the way you hoped. Maybe it was met with silence, resistance, or indifference. And now doubt creeps in. Was I wrong to say it? Was I too much? Should I have stayed quiet? But here's what you must remember. Your truth was never meant to be measured by their reaction. It was meant to be honored by your courage. Because clarity isn't a performance, it's a practice, and like any practice, it stumbles before it soars. You won't always find the right words, you won't always be understood, but every time you choose to stand in your knowing, even when your voice shakes, you strengthen the muscle of authenticity. And that muscle is your lifeline in a world that rewards conformity and punishes depth. So how do you carry this vision without breaking? Not by becoming harder, but by becoming wiser, by learning to protect your energy like the sacred fire it is. You don't owe everyone your full light. Some people aren't ready for it. Some spaces aren't safe for it, and that's not failure, that's discernment. Start by creating boundaries that honor your truth. Say no to conversations that demand you shrink. Walk away from relationships that require you to perform instead of be. Choose silence over compromise when your soul says, "This isn't mine." You don't have to explain yourself to every skeptic. You only have to stay loyal to the quiet voice inside that knows what's real. And when loneliness knocks, because it will, don't run from it. Sit with it. Let it teach you. Loneliness isn't proof you're wrong. It's proof you're ahead. Trees that grow in open fields develop deeper roots because the wind forces them to dig down. Your clarity is your wind. Let it root you, not uproot you. Protect your inner world like a sanctuary. Fill it with silence, nature, art, or whatever reminds you that life isn't just a series of tasks. It's a living, breathing mystery. Spend less time trying to convince others and more time tending to your own presence. Because the more grounded you become in your truth, the less you'll need external validation to hold it. This isn't about isolation. It's about alignment. You don't have to shout your vision from rooftops. You only have to live it so fully that your life becomes its own argument. Let your peace be your protest. Let your joy be your rebellion. Let your refusal to play the game speak louder than any speech ever could. And when fear whispers, "What if you're alone forever?" answer it with this: better to be alone in truth than crowded in illusion. Better to walk your path with integrity than march in formation with a borrowed soul. You were never meant to carry this vision for applause. You were meant to carry it as a torch, for yourself first, and then, if the moment calls, for others. But even if no one ever follows, your life still matters. Because a single person living authentically disrupts the entire system of pretense. So nurture your clarity like a flame in the wind, shield it, feed it, trust it, not because it's easy, but because it's yours. And in a world drowning in noise, your quiet truth is the rarest kind of courage. Don't wait for permission, Don't wait for perfect conditions. Build your life around what you know, not what they believe. And in that unwavering commitment to your own sight, you'll find something no crowd can give you. The unbreakable bond between who you are and how you live. That's not just survival. That's sovereignty. You've protected your truth. You've honored it in silence, in choices, in the quiet rebellion of living differently. And maybe, in the stillness, you've begun to wonder, is this enough? Does my vision matter if no one sees it? If no one changes, if the world keeps spinning in its old tired circles, here's what you must know. Your clarity was never meant to fix the world. It was meant to free you, and in freeing you, it becomes a lifeline for others you may never even meet. Because right now, somewhere, someone is suffocating under the weight of the same illusion you've escaped. They scroll through curated lives feeling empty. They chase promotions that leave them colder. They smile in rooms where their soul screams, and they're waiting, not for